and Tara in final control. So welcome, guys. As you can see, it's quite an overcast, cold morning, quite a lot of moisture in the air, and hopefully this cool morning is going to lead to some kitty cats. So Scott's headed down south to check up on the Nkahumas in case they possibly could have come back from that property to the east of us. We are going to go check this northern boundary for anything we might be able to find. Hopefully we come up with some tracks, but if we don't, it's still an absolutely fantastic time to be out. Early morning in the bush, one of my favorites. You get to see the nice fresh tracks. I think dawn chorus, the birds will start making a noise quite shortly. So what a wonderful time to be out. We are live, so you're experiencing everything with us in real time. We're also interactive, so if you have a question about what we're seeing or anything about the bush you might have wondered, you can send those through to us, and you can do that by using the email address questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Well, let's get going and see what we can find. The temperature is 13 degrees Celsius, which is 55 Fahrenheit, so a bit chilly, but I think the worst of winter's over. It seems to be getting slightly warmer and warmer. No more below 10 degrees Celsius. So that makes me quite happy. Bush is drying out nicely. I really love the dry season. There's just a different ambience about it. The bush is beautiful at all times of the year, but for me, the dry season is definitely my favorite. So I wonder what happened with the Nkahumas last night as they crossed into that property to the south of us. And it's going to be interesting to see, because that has been really where the sticks have been hanging out quite a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see if they just sort of do a mission through there, double checking, smelling, or they are actually going to, and then come back north, or they are actually going to spend some time down there. So interesting times with the line dynamics at the moment. And thank you to our Zoomy, John Q, who is sending an update at about 10 past 10 last night. 2 hippos decided to visit the Djuma Dam camp. That must have been very nice for you guys. Now the water's quite low. They're probably moving into that area to feed off the grassland around quarantine clearings. Not so much for the mud wallow that is now the Djuma Dam. So the nice thing about these big boundary roads and us being generally the first people out in the morning is we get first crack at the tracks, and this is a veritable highway of traffic of animals. So we'll be able to see who's come in and who's gone out. We haven't had any decent leopard tracks for a while, so fingers crossed we find some and see if we can find a spotted cat. Miss Jin is wondering about where is Steph. Well, see, we don't like to let Steph out of the cupboard too often, but hopefully you guys will be seeing him very shortly. Not 100% sure when, but it should be in the next couple of days, hopefully. So it looks like there's a bit of breakup in the clouds. Hopefully, for me, that the sun beats through and opens up a little bit and let some of those glorious rays of sunshine through. The moment we are mobile, or sort of east down the northern boundary, checking for tracks, see if anything's crossed in and out. Maybe check around Buffelshoek Dam, Drakensberg. There we go. Our first mammal of the morning. She's on the move, so I'm just trying to get Genre into the best spot. She's going to walk into the clearing there. Now let's see who's going to be the first to spot. There she is. Adult kudu cow. There we go. As quite often with kudu, for every one you see, there's probably about 3 you don't. There's another one moving through. Should come into closer to us in a few seconds. Go back. Oh, wait for Jean there. It looks like they'll roll back. There's another one actually closer to us. Having a good feed. Got it? No, don't push anyone. There we go. Just suddenly noticed that we noticed her. And see those incredibly large ears, almost like radar dishes, scanning, checking for any sound that might upset her. There's probably about 4 or 5. I can only see this one clearly at the moment. The rest are further into the thick bush. And you can see how well that camouflage works. I mean, we're quite close in. If we had to pull out, the only reason I spotted them is one was having a morning comfort break and had lifted her tail, and I just saw this flash of white. And there you can see how easily a kudu can disappear. Quite often nicknamed the grey ghost because of their ability to vanish in the bush. We're going to continue on, see what else we can find. So while we continue to see what's around, we're going to go see what Scotty's up to. He has been tracking, so hopefully there's some good news there, and we'll be back with you later in the drive.
Hello and welcome on board with myself, Scott, and I'm teamed up with Wium on camera today. We are currently on our southern boundary searching for any sign of the Inkahuma Pride of Lion. Basically last night they were off on our left-hand side coming in an easterly direction, which is towards us. But interestingly, I haven't actually seen them spend much time to the left of this road, and that's where they headed last night. So in all likelihood, they will come back into Vuyatela or onto Juma's property, and we just need to check the southern boundary for any signs of them. So far, I haven't had any tracks or sign of them. We've been stopping and listening. What I did see was what looked to be a drag mark. The hyena seemed to be dragging something, it's hard to tell what, and I spent some time in the area, but sadly the drag mark headed off into the south where we cannot go. But interesting that the hyena may have made a kill or stolen something from the Twin Dams area, and drag marks are such wonderful signs to follow up on where animals may have dragged a carcass. It's often leopard and hyena that will drag carcasses. Leopards would drag them towards a tree or a safe place where they could try and stash their kill, and a hyena may just be dragging them off where they can eat the kill. Often hyena will also actually drag remains of carcasses and leave them in water holes, like a pantry that they can return to later and feed on. Just heard an update on the radio. I just want to chat with Andrew and see exactly what it was. Andrew, could you go get into that update, please? Okay, copy, thanks. I'm on Gari Main now. I've actually just found their tracks here, but I will head up in that direction. Well, as we assume, the lion tracks have indeed come out on this road, and they're kind of up and down. They're going to be hard to see, but I should be able to show you at least one. On our right hand side there, we do have some tracks of them crossing into Juma. It's always a little bit tricky positioning the vehicle so you can see the tracks, but I really would like you to see them. There we go. So you can quite clearly see these tracks. These are the Nkahuma Pride, or at least one member of them, heading into Juma. But I did just get a report from Andrew saying he has already found their tracks quite far into Juma, around quarantine clearings. So we need to slowly make our way back up into that area to give them a hand. Interestingly, there look like quite a few buffalo tracks in this area, and they could well have been chasing the buffalo in this area, because I can see quite a lot of disturbance on the road of where they may have been chasing the buffalo up and down. Tricky prey to bring down the mighty Cape buffalo, and the Nkahuma Pride have yet to show us how to catch one. They have caught some over the few months that we've been here, but never on Juma. Probably about 5 minutes away from where Andrew does have their tracks, but we will slowly make our way up in that area, also making sure we don't overlook anything else interesting along the way. Even though we are kind of, a goal of ours this morning is to find these lions, that's not to say we're going to overlook anything else that may happen, or any other tracks or signs that we may be able to find along the way. Their tracks have just popped out onto this road, and what I can tell from their tracks this morning already, and the few tracks that I've seen, is that they have been hunting. They're zigzagging through the block. They're not moving in one set direction, which they would be when they are kind of less hungry. They will always be on the hunt. Even if they are sleeping, lions will be ready to pounce on something. But the fact that their tracks are crisscrossing in all different directions shows that they are actively trying to seek out some prey. And according to Brent, who saw them yesterday afternoon, they are looking quite hungry. So maybe we'll get lucky and find them still on the hunt. In general, it will be much easier for lion to hunt their prey at night under cover of darkness, but that's not to say they cannot be successful during the day. And it's not to say that they will not try hunt during the day. And the same goes for all predators, really. There may be times or peaks when it may be most suitable for them to hunt, but they will often take whatever opportunities they can get. Our Treehouse Dam is just off to our left. But according to Andrew, we need to continue straight north towards Quarantine and check around there. Kind of in the central parts of Djuma.
Welcome back, everyone. Sorry, the signal might be a bit iffy. I'm about to go through a drainage line. I'll be through it quickly. So we've just arrived at the Buffelshoek waterhole. Not much happening here, but we're still looking for tracks. And here Scotty's on the line tracks already. And we're going to see, the only thing we've seen so far at the dam is a pair of Egyptian geese. And there they are. Oh, and a grey heron disappearing. Off it goes. And we have some Egyptian geese down on the edge of the water. So while we're next to a waterhole, there's been a comment about the Djuma waterhole by Ginny and Marianne saying how low the water is and how awful it looks. Well, I'm going to have to beg to disagree. I don't think it looks awful. It looks about right for this time of the year. We are in the height of our dry season. And it is just nature taking its place. The water is going to drop. And that is sometimes very beneficial for us because the animals are going to be forced onto these remaining water points, and which makes the game viewing sometimes a lot better and a lot easier to find certain animals because of that. Oh, there's a blacksmith lapwing joining the Egyptian geese. And Ginny and Marianne would also like to know when the rains are going to start. Probably early November is when the rain's going to start. So there's a likelihood that quite a few of these water holes are going to actually become completely dry before then. We are in quite a dry year, and the bush goes in cycles between wet and dry years. So I wouldn't worry about it. It is natural, and the animals do adapt. And one of the things about having these dry years is that any animal that is possibly harboring a bit of weakness or illness will actually die or be caught by the predators, and that keeps the whole population healthy. So in the time of plenty, the rainy, we've had a few very wet years, so now we're probably moving into a dry cycle. So it's going to be a little bit tougher for some of the herbivores, but it'll be a great time for the predators. And you quite often we'll see a rise in sort of predator numbers during these dry years, and then as well as then during the wet years you'll have a rise in the prey species or the herbivore numbers. So nature balances itself out. So I wouldn't worry too much about the waterholes drying. From what I can see, probably the only permanent waterhole we're going to have left by the end of the dry season is probably Buffelshoek. and that could be really exciting because there's probably going to be quite a lot of action around here, especially going towards October. So I'm very excited for it, and as I said, don't worry too much about things drying up. Unfortunately, no hippos at Buffels Hook this morning, and just the geese, so we're going to continue on and see what else we can find. Morning, Crested Franklin. Up early, on the prowl, foraging for grass seeds and insects. And there's quite a few of them around. You can hear them contact calling every now and then, this little toot toot. I'm going to disappear behind where the camera is able to go, and we'll leave it on its morning mission while we continue on ours. Oh, and try it. Another Franklin species. Not quite as relaxed as the other one, scuttling off a little bit. And there we go. And it's a Natal Franklin. Also a very pretty bird. Also off on the morning forage. I think that one's a little bit nervous. It seems like it's lost its little covey. Oh, and disappears again. You saw the difference there with the beak especially. You could see the color in, oh, where's my bird book? The color in the Natal Franklin's beak, it had a reddish beak, whereas the Crested Franklin was, oh, that's not very good. There's a thorn. Off of that. And the Crested Franklin, although it has that really nice stripy body, is not as sort of colorful as the Natal, although you saw that very distinct crest as to how it gets its name. There we go, into the Franklins. Not that page. Here we go. So you do have different color variations of the Crested Franklin. From what we could see, from what I could see, the Crested Franklin we got here is number one, the Ravumu subspecies. They call it a subspecies, but it's more just a color variation. And you saw that the streaks went further down the breast than the other one, which occurs further north in Africa, sort of up above Kenya and that. And then the Natal Franklin, there we go, number 6. And you can see the orange bill and the quite distinctly colored feet in comparison to the Crested. So they have that bright bit of orange, but they obviously don't have as pretty markings around their head, and they don't have that distinct crest. And the reason these are Franklin as opposed to spurfowl, which is another thing we do get here, we get Swanson spurfowl here, and all the spurfowl have open skin and normally red or orange on their face. So there's the difference between a spurfowl and a Franklin. Okay, well, Franklin and spurfowl lesson over, and we'll let them disappear to try find their breakfast, and we're going to try find some animals. We can hear that there. I heard Scott describe it as a rusty bed spring almost, it sounded like, and that's the crested francolin giving his morning chorus. Let me just rearrange my books and stuff here quickly. Keep the bird book close at hand. So we just saw those geese at the Buffalo's Hook waterhole, and we've got an interesting comment from Carol, who says, do I think the Egyptian geese have ever seen Egypt? I'm afraid not. I don't think they're that well traveled, that particular pair. I think they probably spend the majority of their time in the Sabi Sands. Maybe they might go off on holiday to the Manueleti occasionally, but I think they'll be pretty much in this area. The reason it's got the name the Egyptian goose is because the first place they were described from, and they are known from ancient times, from Egypt, and can be seen in hieroglyphics, even paintings of Egyptian geese. And I'm going to show you their distribution now, which is actually quite fascinating because of how. There we go. So unfortunately, this book only covers Africa south of the Sahara, and Egypt is just off this map up here. But they actually cover all the way through to Egypt. They follow the Nile River from Sudan, which is there, and they will actually occur along the Nile River all the way to the Red Sea. So they were first recorded in ancient times by the Egyptians, and were known to the Greeks and that, and the Romans and other people that visited ancient Egypt. So the first sort of scientists probably would have been the Greeks and the Romans, and they would have described it and given it the name Egyptian goose. And I've got a very good friend of mine. When she was a little girl, her and her sister had a bit of a battle with the word Egyptian, and they couldn't really remember the word Egyptian, but they could remember the pyramids were from Egypt, so they actually called them pyramid ducks, which I found quite amusing. Good morrow and welcome on the Sunrise Safari. Lily. Lily is asking about quails versus francolin, and are the francolin similar to quail? The francolin would be far more similar to a grouse or partridge, is what I guess. The quails should be not. They're definitely not falcons. There we go. So quails are quite a lot smaller and a slightly different body shape, and they don't run around so openly like the francolin. They will sort of be very shy and secretive in the longer grass, and here we get sort of commonly we'll get two species of quail, of the bigger quails, and that's the common quail and the harlequin quail. They do prefer sort of more open grasslands, but we will find them, especially during the summer months, on the seep lines. And then we do have the button quails, which is a tiny type of quail, and the most common one we get here is the Karashani button quail. Very, very pretty birds, very distinct flying style, and quite often you can only identify them as they take off and fly. You'll see that sort of the back of them more often than you'll ever actually get to see them walking in the grass. So quite nice. So we do get quails, and as I said, the Franklin are probably far more close to grouse or partridge. Well done, Marianne. Marianne has started a bird list. Scott has recommended you guys should. You should start a bird list, mammal list, tree list. Try keep up with everything we see on the game drives. And so she's saying thanks because that's a new Franklin species for her bird list. Well done to you, Marianne. Hopefully we can add one or two more. On that, who can tell me how many Franklin, and we'll include spurfowl in this, species we get on Juma and Arethusa? How many Franklin and spurfowl species do we get on Arethusa and Juma? You can send your answers to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. So it looks like the sun is battling the clouds off to the east of us, and it looks like there might be, hopefully the sun looks like it's winning the battle at the moment. There is a little bit of breakup in the cloud. So sticking with our feathered friends, Dave would like to know, what is the percentage of migratory birds to non-migratory birds? Dave, if I had to tell you I knew, I would be a liar. And I'm not. So there are quite a few migratory species, but I would say probably percentage-wise, and I am guessing, so I'm going to ask you guys to double-check for me. I don't know. I would probably say there are obviously far more resident bird species, maybe 20% migratory, but I'm not 100% on that. So if you guys could double check and keep me honest, I'd really appreciate that. Okay, well, I just wanted to check down here if there were any tracks quickly. There aren't. So we're going to head a little bit further east. So I think while Scott is hot on the trails of some kitty cats, maybe we should do a little bit of a concentration on the birds for the first little while this morning. So I'm going to keep my eyes out for any bird species to help you guys add to your lists. So someone obviously knows that probably one of my favorite out of the smaller animals we see out in the bush are the frogs. And Penny Pine is asking, have we seen any interesting frogs recently? Penny, unfortunately at this time of the year, we see very little frogs. A lot of them sort of go into hibernation and we don't really see them. And because we're not on a major river, we see even less. Probably the only frog I've seen in the last while is a thing called a platana, and I saw one very briefly at Buffelshoek Waterhole, and they are actually probably the most aquatic frog we have. so least reliant on the land, and they spend the majority of their time in the water. Just at the end of dry season, at the end of the wet season, as we're going into the dry season, as we go through Philemon's Dip, there was a little puddle there, and we managed to see a hammerkop kill about 2 or 3 of that typical species of frog. And then a couple of nights later, when I went to turn on the water pump, the most incredible thing, as that pool had almost disappeared, all these frogs were hopping up the road, and they were all platanas who spend the majority of their time, as I said, confined in water, were hopping up the road, moving from that tiny little puddle in the drainage line through to the Gari or Juma Dam. So very interesting to watch, and they will move. But that's the only frog I've seen in the last while. And I will find a picture of them for you now. But I would say one of my most favorite frogs, which as soon as the rains come, will be one of the first frogs you hear calling after there's a few puddles around for them to live in. There's a thing called a banded rubber frog. They have got the most wonderful call, and it really is incredible to hear it during the summer months in the bush. Sort of a and it just really sort of, after that first set of rain, it really gets me quite excited to know it's time to put on my Wellingtons and get on my headlamp, and time to go catch some frogs in puddles, see if we can identify them. So that frog I was speaking about was a common platana, which is this one here, and that's the only frog I've seen recently. And we do get a couple of other species here, but from what I saw, it was very difficult. It could have been one of the others, but you see they've got those eyes on top of their head, and you occasionally just see their heads that'll pop out of the water. And when we saw that hammerkop killing them, that hammerkop took a long time to kill them. They've got incredibly sharp claws, and obviously that's one of their defense mechanisms. So that platana that hammerkop took at least 10 to 15 minutes to make sure it was very dead, so it didn't accidentally hurt it while it was trying to swallow it. So there we go. But I am looking forward to the first rains and the cacophony of frog noises we're going to get at all the water holes and pans. Well done to Georgianne in Illinois, who was spot on with the Franklin species we get here. It's 5. It's the Koki, Shelleys, Swansons, Natal, and am I missing one now? Crested. There we go. So while we continue on to see what we can find, we're going to cross across to Scotty and see what he's been up to.
Well, it sounds like you've been having a very interesting discussion and quiz with Brent up at Buffels Hook Waterhole. We are still driving around wildly looking for the Inkahuma Pride of Lion. Their tracks are all over the show, making it difficult for us to track them down. But what will make it easier is the sun that's popping up over the eastern horizon, because it'll make it easier for us to see their tracks on the road It's really difficult to see tracks in overcast weather or flat light, but now that the sun's coming up, it'll certainly help us do the job a little bit more quickly. The tracks were heading from our right-hand side, kind of towards this road, but quite far from here. I did a big loop ahead trying to leapfrog in front of their general movement of direction. So we are still trying our best to find them, but we have yet to have any luck. Their tracks have moved quite a large distance already through Juma, and it certainly appears like they are trying to chase down some prey. I believe a lot of the quiz that you've been doing is related to birds, so I'm going to try and keep an eye out for any interesting birds that you may be able to add to your bird lists. And if you haven't started a bird list, I suggest getting a little piece of paper out now and starting. It's a great way to get involved in the birding, and it's not just about the big cats out here, it's about all the animals. And I'm told Marianne has already started her bird list and is enjoying adding new species to it as we go along on the drives. Some hyena tracks heading down this road in the same direction we're going in. And Lily B would like to know if we will have a chance of seeing a hummingbird here. Sadly not, Lily B. We do not get hummingbirds in Africa, and the sunbirds are our closest kind of species in terms of birds that we will see here.
Claw going that way. Welcome back, everyone. We're still on the eastern boundary, and we are heading to the south at the moment. I'm actually searching for another francolin species, which is my favorite. I just heard them calling. Who can tell me which francolin that is? I know I've taught it to you guys for the older viewers. To drink a beer, to drink a beer, to drink a beer. And that's how I got taught it as a kid, to remember the call. See if you guys can remember what I taught you. And there it is, it's calling just up ahead. We'll see if we can find it. And it's my favorite francolin species. Who can tell me which one it is? And you can send your answers to questions@wildearth.tv. Or you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Oh. So, during the dry season is actually the only time you get to see this and another slightly more retiring francolin species. During the summer with the long grass, it's near impossible. You hear them calling all the time, but to actually see them, I think we're going to find it. We're stalking francolin on a live safari drive here on Juma Private Game Reserve. So quite often with crested and Natal francolin, they like to call from a vantage point or a crest, where these guys will call from in the grass. try to sit here quietly. Might call again, but I'm just going to try to spot them. So we're looking for any little bit of movement in the grass. They can be quite shy and retiring. I can't see it yet, even though it's calling within like 10 meters of me. I think it's behind this fallen down tree here. So we're going to go forward a little bit to see if we can just see behind that tree and see if we can see that Franklin species is making a racket. Oh, you sneaky, right next to us, sitting on this. As I said, quite a few Franklin species like to get a little bit of, can you get them? Do I need to move?
Roll start.
There it is, such a beautiful Franklin. Now you need to call for us. So there it is, it's my favorite Franklin. I find them incredibly pretty. Not conventionally pretty, but you just see how delicate the markings are around the face and the head. That white and black mask almost with the orange. And there you can see very distinct spurs on its legs. And those are for fighting for females, and they actually, like roosters, will use their spurs, and they can do quite a lot of damage to another Franklin while fighting for the ladies. Looks like this poor guy doesn't have too many ladies around him at the moment, and they could be feeding off, or he could be calling to try advertise for ladies. Quite puffed up in the cool morning. I'm hoping he decides to call again. So well done to George. Ann has got Shelley's Franklin. So this is a little male Shelley's Franklin. Sitting here, doesn't look like he's got any girls, so that's why he's calling to try advertise for the ladies, saying, listen to me, I'm big and beautiful, you must come spend your time with me, not with these other males around here. Obviously, he's not very impressed with my Cokie Franklin impression. Maybe he's got a bit of stage fright now that he's on camera. He could also just be listening for the responses of other males. So we're just going to sit very quietly. Apart from the Franklin being right next to us, I think I might have just heard some alarm calls. So I'm just going to take my earpiece out for a second and try listen further to the south of us. The bush is definitely waking up. And you hear quite a lot of other birds moving. I thought I heard some alarm calls. Now watch Murphy's Law. As soon as we move away from this guy, he's going to start calling. Wait, there we go. Oh. Oh, it looks like we might. Thinking about it. Oh, so beautiful. It seemed to be every time I started the car he would call, so maybe we'll try that. It's very strange with birds. Sometimes things like that can set them off. What we actually need is another male to call somewhere else to get him really going. So, as you can see, he's on the ground at the moment, and francolin are mostly a terrestrial species. But in the evening, they will fly into bushes and trees and roost in them to keep safe from all the nocturnal predators like genets and serval and possibly even civet, and leopard even will try eat them. I've seen leopard eat Shelley's francolin before. Well, X-Ranga is on form this morning of the comedy routine. He said he's not going to sing until we give him a beer. Unfortunately, we don't really carry that with us. We only carry water. So I think he's fresh out of luck. And it's a bit early in the day. Yeah, we'll give him another minute. Okay, we've got one more trick. We'll see if this works. No, that didn't work. So we're going to leave him be looking for ladies. And we're going to cross back to Scotty to see what Scotty's been up to. Hopefully he's had more success with the line tracks than I have trying to coax the Shelley's francolin to call. So we'll see you a little later.
Welcome back, everyone. Still no good news from us, but it sounds like you had a wonderful sighting of quite a rare francolin to actually see the Koki francolin. So really happy that Brent managed to track one down for you. apologies, the Shelleys Franklin, but either Shelleys or Koki are both two of the Franklin that occur here, but we don't see nearly as often as the crested or the Natal. Now, we are continuing to drive around, hoping to come across some further sign of these lion. And what we're going to do is link onto our southern boundary and then come back up Ledwood Road. Last tracks are heading in that direction. Apologies for the brakes and set off this vehicle this morning, and I was just chatting with Lily about hummingbirds and sunbirds, because we don't get hummingbirds here sadly. I've actually never seen one in my life and would really love to. They're incredible birds with that ability to hover with an extremely high wing beat. As they suck the nectar from flowers. The sunbirds that we have here have also got a long beak similar to a hummingbird, but they do not hover. They don't have that incredible ability. There's another bird that some of you may be able to add to your lists, and we may be able to see it hunting if we're lucky. It's just on the fringe of this waterhole. Just try and get a little bit closer, and then we can stop and watch it hunt, and also watch the other birds possibly coming down to drink. There's a few birds around here. Oh, quickly, Wium, the little ones on the right. Quickly, 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 the little ones.
The white one?
Yes, quick. Well, who would have thought? Love at the waterhole. Wonderful to see that. And these are little three-banded plovers who we just caught in the throes of passion. And wasn't that interesting to see? They've carried on now as if nothing ever happened. And, well, they're having a little post-coital snack, you could say. So, some of you may be able to put in brackets there on your list. Three-banded plover mating. Now, the other bird that actually initially got our attention is the one on the top left of your screen. This is called a hummerkop. It specializes in hunting aquatic animals, fish, frogs, aquatic invertebrates. And watch it closely, you'll see how it uses its feet to try and disturb or discover any potential prey, and then it'll dart its beak in at an incredibly high speed. We saw this same bird at the treehouse waterhole a few months ago, catching tiny catfish. And because we're having no luck in finding the Inkuhuma pride hunting this morning, at least we can show you the hummerkop hunting. Morning, Brent. Brent, there's some Mkonzo that head east from Elephant Skull into the Mulwati, and there were also other tracks on Ingwe Track heading east over Twin Dam. So hard to tell which is which. I've checked bat a lure onto mamba and haven't had any further luck. Copy, sounds good. I'm going to come on to Leadwood from Gari, man. Well, good news. We're getting some reinforcements on the lion hunt. And Brent is going to lend a hand and check a certain area, which is going to be very useful. It's been interesting to watch this algae bloom develop over the last couple of weeks. There never used to be as much in the Twin Dams waterhole. So that has been interesting to watch develop, and it's creating a beautiful green carpet over this water surface. Got a question through from Mavis, and she's aware of the fact that it's winter here and is interested to know, why is the grass brown and not green? Well, it's quite simple, Mavis. There is not enough water to allow the grass to be green, and it's only the evergreen trees that will remain green at this time of the year. On top of that, we did have a very, very dry rainy season. Not nearly as much rain, probably half of what we would usually get in our summer months, and that has emphasized how dry the vegetation is at this time of the year. But our winters are always brown and dry and dusty, but this one especially so due to our lack of rain during the rainy season. We very, very seldom ever get frost here, but frost would be a contributing factor to the browning grass, but it seldom does drop below zero in this area. So it's merely the fact that the grass does not have enough water in order to be green. Okay. Well, through a low signal area, so we're going to send you over to Brent's vehicle and catch up a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, we're with a particularly funny looking buffalo bull, part of a little group of Duggar boys. That is quite an impressive boss on quite a small buffalo. So bodily sized, he's quite a bit smaller than the others, but he has definitely one of the bigger bosses I've seen on a buffalo since I've been here. He just has a very bemused look about him, that buffalo in particular. The buffalo do seem to be a little bit jumpy. And this is the area where we had the Nkahumas chasing buffalo bulls, not yesterday, but the day before. And they are all looking a little bit jumpy, and apparently there are tracks of lions heading in this area, so who knows if they've had a difficult night being harassed. So they're not normally as this jumpy. They're normally quite relaxed around us, and they just seem to be a little bit nervous, a little bit on edge. It could be that they have been harassed by lions a couple of days ago and they're still a little bit nervous. Or it could have been that they were harassed last night again. So who knows what happens in those hours of darkness while we are safely tucked into our beds. So we're right up on the crest, and we're finding that quite a lot at the moment with those groups of buffalo bulls. So during the day, as it gets warmer, they'll move down towards drainage lines and move down towards the water holes. And then as it gets cold at night, they move up to the crests where it's slightly warmer, and they'll actually sleep up here on the high ground, and then do a bit of grazing, and then as it gets warmer, move back down towards the water holes and thickets around the drainage lines. Can we hear that? So we can hear this call behind us. There we go. We've actually got two little owl species calling. You can hear that. And then we have the other one that a little bit further to the north. There's another one that's. So there's actually a pearl-spotted owlet and a barred owlet calling. But back to these buffalo. Last night when we were with them, Kahuma Pride, they came across a single buffalo bull and they attempted to hunt, and they literally came, one female came nose, almost probably 3-4 meters from the buffalo, and the others had moved around the side, and I think she was hoping the buffalo was going to run, but instead of running towards where the other 3 lionesses were, it charged her and chased her and ran literally through the center of all the lions and absolute pandemonium and escaped off into the bush. But so the Nkahumas that we've watched them in the last 4 days have 3 unsuccessful buffalo hunts. And it is quite a feat to take on one of these old boys, especially a group of old boys. They can be very cantankerous, and they're quite fond of being alive, so they tend to defend themselves quite heavily. So try to sneak a little bit forward. So those 2 little owl species we heard calling are 2 of the smaller owl species. They're actually owlets rather than owls. And as always with these buffalo, there is a swarm of flies around them. There we go. Just quickly, very quickly before we cross across to Scotty, and he's not very far from me, and I think Scott's got the reason why these buffalo are looking a little bit nervous. But so there's 2 owls we heard calling, a number 3 and number 4, the pearl-spotted owlet and the barred owlet. They're 2 of the smaller owl species. So there we go. And the smallest owlet is the one we probably baffled to see the most, the one we get here, which is number 1, the African Scops owl. And we hear them calling quite often, and the calls are very, very distinct. Boop, boop. One of my favorites in the bush, but they are probably the most difficult to see. You see that coloring, and they sit up against the tree trunks and completely disappear. Let's move a little bit forward with these buffalo. Scott. Scott, how far from sort of Drakensberg across those drainage lines? I've got quite a nervous group of Duggar boys here that are keep looking in that general direction. copy. I'm going to stand by here. So you can see they're just not 100% relaxed. Scotty's just got tracks of the Nkahuma Pride. Looks like they're heading almost directly towards us. So we're just going to wait here and wait for an update from Scott to see if he has any more luck. I've just got a sneaky suspicion, judging from their behavior, that there might be some kitty cats abound and they might have been harassing these guys overnight. So why a buffalo is such a formidable foe for a lion or for anything, and Junebug on Twitter has asked us, they are really dangerous, right? They are, and particularly these groups of old boys. So quite often they've been pushed out of the big breeding herds, so they're sort of quite old and quite cantankerous. And they have probably the most dangerous animal for us to bump into while we're walking. Is a buffalo bull. You never really know what they're going to do, especially when they're old and in these bachelor groups like this. And also because they're old, sometimes their senses aren't as sharp as they once were. So he'll be sleeping in a thicket and you'll walk in and he'll only hear you and you'll only often see him when he's very close to you. And that can create complete panic in them, and quite often it's quite close. So it's sort of within that flight-fight zone. So if you bump into them too close, they will try fight you, and often you will end up in a tree to try avoid them. But from a lion pride point of view, it's a high risk, high reward, because a buffalo can do quite a lot of damage to you, or as a lion, but there's a lot of meat on there that can keep the pride well fed for a few days. So we're just going to stand by here and listen carefully. Keep a look around behind me here to where Scott is. We're going to cross across very quickly to Scotty, and we're just going to stand by here in case something happens in this area.
Well, finally, we've got lucky and we found at least one member of the Nkahuma Pride. It's young Junior, and he's busy having a salad for breakfast. So not what we were hoping for, but just like your domestic cats and dogs may eat grass to help purge their system, this is what we can see this young male lion doing at the moment. I'm guessing the rest of the pride could be heading towards where Brent is with those nervous buffalo, and there are a lot of buffalo tracks in this area, so they could be trying to continually hunt down these buffalo. Now, we have tried to cross through this area. It's very thick and impenetrable, so that's why we thought we'd get you across and at least get you a brief visual of him. And now we're going to need to try and link ahead and try and find where the rest of the pride is. He quite often will trail behind the rest of the pride. He's a little bit lazy, as are most male lions. Not to say that they can't hunt, but it's a common trait of him to hang back behind the rest of the pride. And now we need to try and somehow find a way in ahead of them. Like I said, there's a lot of drainage lines and riverbeds that run through that area, making it impossible for us to cross. So now we need to see what we can do. Thanks very much to Wium. Wium actually spotted him. So if it wasn't for Wium, we would probably not have got that brief view. There's a lot of the buffalo tracks on the road here heading in the direction of Brent, as well as their dung. And lion are known to chase buffalo for many, many hours, sometimes even days, before they eventually get lucky see if you can get one of these little blue birds here. It's not going to be easy.
One flew away, is there another one?
There's another one there. Have you got it? Oh, yeah. Those tiny little blue wax balls that I was hoping to show you there. We've got to take a little bit of a gamble when it comes to the birds because so often they fly off, but that would have been a great one to add to the list. It's a very pretty little blue bird. Now, station's lost visual of young Madora from Nkohumas. Our home corns are still heading north out of Leadwood. So I did see one lion track still heading in the same direction that we are. Like I say, we could be quite some distance behind the rest of the pride. Just going to take another quick look here. There are more tracks here. From the brief views we got of them, it didn't look like they were successful in any way last night in terms of hunting. Sometimes they may catch small prey like impala, and then it can be difficult to tell that they've actually fed, but all those small meals will help keep them sustained until they make a meal of a kill of a decent size. Still more tracks heading this way, also trailing buffalo. Come on, lions, where are you hiding? So Brent's made a great decision and he is staying with the buffalo bulls in the hope that the lion could be nearby. So that's a great idea. We're not far from one another. Ashley from Alabama, good to have you with us. Ashley's noticed that we occasionally call the old buffalo bulls Dugger Boys, and this is a term that they've used for them because of the fact that they're often covered in mud, and Dugger is another word used for cement in South Africa, and that muddy cement look coating the buffaloes, the old buffalo bulls, is the reason for that name. I'm guessing these lions are still to our left, but it'll be best for us to stay on the roads for the time being, and then failing having any luck on the road, we may have to try and delve deeper into this thick block. Now, as we drive along slowly here, we're going to be trying to check for tracks. The area of the road we're on now is very grassy, so it's going to be very difficult to see tracks here. Just driving nice and slowly in the hope that we may hear or see some kind of signal or sign of these lions. I've just got visual of Brent, And that's great because now I know exactly how close he is to us. And what we can now do is try and drive a little bit further into this block. Brent, there's a battler quite close to you if you're interested. I think it's really fortunate that both of us are here in this area because I feel like these lion are going to pop out and chase these buffalo very shortly. But in the meantime, let's also, like Brent, just stop and listen and enjoy the views of this young male steenbuck. Such pretty little antelope. I say it's young simply because its horns aren't fully developed. They'll probably be twice the length by the time he's fully mature. Now what could have happened is these lions could have been chasing these buffalo throughout the night, and from the tracks that we've seen it looks like they have had a busy night. So even though these buffalo that Brent are with may be looking back in the direction of where these lion are, the lion will not necessarily still be pursuing them. Brent, I would stay there if I were you. I think we're going to cross here somewhere. As I was saying, they could be sleeping, these lions. They could have finally had enough hunting for one night and now decided to have a bit of a break. So we could find them sleeping somewhere here. Now we're just going to try and kind of backtrack a little bit and try and access the area where young Junior was last seen heading. It was inaccessible from the south, but now that we are approaching from the north, there's a chance we could hopefully find them. The fact that Junior still looks fairly empty-stomached is a good sign to us that the Pride was unsuccessful completely last night. Had they have caught an impala, he would have been the one who gets to eat the most of it, simply because of his size and strength. He would have outcompeted other members of the Pride. And it would have been tough hunting conditions last night. Very, very still evening, so the prey animals would have been able to hear the approach of these lions as they were trying to stalk up to them. Okay. What's the problem? Okay. Sounds like we've got some mechanical issues with our vehicle, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. We can still continue moving slowly. Well, Wium seems to think we need to have a closer look, so we're maybe going to send you across to Brent's vehicle, have a quick look at what exactly has happened to one of our springs, and hopefully the lion will pop out with Brent when you're waiting with him.
So welcome back, guys. Scotty's probably about 100 meters from us. I'm trying to find where those lions are in the bush. Got my fingers crossed that they are possibly stalking this little group of buffalo bulls that we are sitting with. So Scott last had that sight of Junior off in front of us there. And these buffalo did look a little bit nervous. Maybe they just smelt the lions. So Scotty's over there, the buffalo over here, and we're just sitting quietly, waiting and listening and hoping for some action. So we can see, the rest of the group of buffaloes have moved a little bit further into that thicket. And when it comes to this type of stuff, as those who've been on the safaris for a while will know, patience is the most important weapon in your arsenal when it comes to catching the most incredible sightings. So just being able to sit here and wait. We know the lions are in the area, and I'm pretty sure they can hear these buffalo as they feed and move through the bush. So it is still quite cool. Hopefully they are still on their way towards these buffalo. And I mean, I think Scott lost Jr. not more than 100 meters from here. You can hear some crested francolin in the background. That's not an alarm call at all. It's just them calling for the joy of the morning. So we are listening for other alarm calls of birds and animals. And we're keeping a lookout, possibly see that sort of live movement and that of a lioness stalking through the grass. See all the oxpeckers and the drongo. So having a look at that buffalo head, you can see that's incredible weight to carry around, and Bear in Canada has noticed, is it as heavy as it looks? It definitely is, Bear. And buffalo heads weigh a huge amount. I'll try to find out for you how much a boss can weigh, and obviously it depends on the individual, whether some have bigger and others smaller, but I'm quite sure I might be able to find some information on how much they do weigh. Okay. Let's have a look here. So I'm just having a quick look in my book. I can't find an actual weight on a boss here, but the record for this part of the world is from tip to tip, the largest one ever recorded in southern Africa. This book's a bit old. This was from Zimbabwe, 124.8 centimeters. I know of one from Botswana a few years ago that was 136 centimeters from tip to tip. So you'll notice with buffalo, with those bosses, when they're younger, they have what's called a soft boss. And a soft boss is when there's still a lot of hair growing on their boss, and as they get older, they become really hard and gnarled and very, very tough, and that's a sign of a mature buffalo bull. Seems like the sun is fighting its way through the clouds. And we're hoping that these lions are somewhere very close by and are still approaching these buffalo very sneakily, stalking them through these thickets below us. Standing by, Scott. Copy, Scott. I'm happy to go have a look in the block if you want to babysit the buffalo. Copy, thanks. So Scott's just going to go have a quick check up on the eastern boundary to see if they possibly have missed these buffalo and snuck off. But the last visual of old Junior was pretty much heading directly towards where he's sitting. Let me just move a little bit so we can still keep an eye on these buffalo. Right on the edge. Scott lost that Junior probably 100 meters that way. He's just checking. He said there were some more tracks further to the south of us, so he's checking. Maybe Junior fell asleep and got left far behind, which is a possibility, and it does happen to young male lions sometimes. So we're hoping to pick up either the blacks of the ears or just a flick of an ear as a lion is approaching these buffalo. We're using our ears, listening for any little alarm call. Even the tiny little bird might give away the presence of a predator. And sometimes when lions hunt buffalo, it can take them quite a while to get into the position for that initial charge. There we go, there's the foremost buffalo. I'm just glassing with my binoculars into this thick bush to see if I can possibly spot anything there. So it's always good to just keep an eye out, even though quite often your open eye is great. Just use your binoculars every now and then to try pick up the slightest little movement. So we're going to cross across the Scotty. We're going to actually move into the bush now and see if we have a little bit more luck and trying to find them in this area. We're quite confident that they're very close to us here. So we will see you a little later, and hopefully our Nkahuma curse comes to an end and this hunt pans out.
Welcome back, everyone, and I know this is a little bit frustrating. We know the lions are somewhere very close by, but sadly our vehicle has broken a bracket that holds in one of the springs, so it wouldn't be advisable for us to off-road because we don't want to cause any serious damage to the car. It is already fairly serious, so that's why we've come back onto the roads where it's a little bit less stressful for the shock absorbers and springs on the car. And I just heard some birds alarm calling off to our left, so I've decided to stop, try and just make sure that it's not the lion that they've seen. I think Brent in his able vehicle is going to try and snoop around into the block. I'm guessing that these lions are probably sleeping very close to us and also very, very close to these buffalo. Now, if any of you would like to send through questions or comments to us, it's very easy because it's a live safari, and therefore we can answer your questions immediately if you just hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Junebug, good to have you with us. And I would like to know whether Junior would make a kill on his own. And yes, he certainly would if the opportunity presented itself to him. For him, he's quite lucky at the moment because he can rely on the lioness within his pride to do a lot of the work. But there's going to come a point, and it's very imminent, when he gets kicked out of this pride of lion by his fathers, and he's going to have to move off and establish a territory of his own. Now, when he gets kicked out, he will be alone. Sadly, he doesn't have any brothers that he can take with him. So in that period, he is going to have to be very resourceful. He'll probably consume 1 or 2 tortoises and strange animals like that that are easy to catch and kill, but not very tasty and nutritious, and they're very small. But it is something that male lions, when they are kicked out, will do. They'll do a lot of scavenging, but they are also capable of hunting, and when hunger overrides their laziness, they will get their act together and make some kills. So it's not unlikely for him to be able to kill on his own, but at the moment I would say it is, because he is in a fortunate position where he can be lazy. Well, I'm very happy we at least got a glimpse of him, indicating to us that the rest of the pride is probably not far away. And I'm also happy that Brent is in this area, because it obviously increases our chances of capturing any action if it does unfold. The lions are basically somewhere in our left, off to the left of us, but it's very thick, and there's a network of small riverbeds making tricky crossings and not easy maneuvering through. We are at least in a good area, and we know the lion must be here somewhere. If we don't have much luck in the next few minutes, we may, or I may at least, move out of this area and leave Brent, who can off-road in his able vehicle, to continue searching around for them. The fact that there are a few buffalo bulls nearby means tracking on foot would be a little bit risky, because buffalo bulls do pose a massive threat to us when we are on foot, especially when they are understandably highly nervous because they've been chased by a lion and know that lions are on their tail. Well, we've just got a funny comment through from X-Ranga, and I think Brent's been unfortunate in his luck with being on vehicles that break. It's not his fault, but now it's my turn to be on a vehicle that's broken. Just had a few Franklin let off a few alarm calls. So maybe these line are on the move, but at this stage of the day it wouldn't surprise me if they've decided to have a rest. Brent, well, you know, it is warming up considerably. You would have noticed I've taken my beanie off, my one jacket. Copy, very good. Brent's also heard those same Franklin alarm call, and he's a bit closer to them, so he's going to go and check up on them. Well, if it was easy to find the lines every time, there would be no joy when we do find them, and this is a good example of sometimes having to work a little bit harder to get you good views of these animals, and it, I guess, can make us realize how fortunate we are on some occasions when they're just lying up in open clearings, easy for us to view and find. Anna Marie has just made a comment saying that the buffalo may let us know where the lion are. And like Brent says, well, from the report that I got, the buffalo were looking back in the direction of where at least Junior was coming from. So yes, they certainly will, but not if the lion are sleeping, which I fear may be the case. It's not far at all from where we saw Junior to where Brent had the buffalo. And therefore, the fact that nothing has happened in all this time makes me think that these lion have either headed off in another direction or are fast asleep. But certainly, they could help in us finding these lion. See if we can get you a visual of these arrow-marked babblers while we wait for the lions to disclose their location. You may have heard a babbling noise as we headed past these bushes on our left. It was a flock of arrow-marked babblers chatting away. Just like the lions, it appears that the arrow-marked babblers are also trying to evade us, but they are off to our left. Are there any left in there? You may just see a few blurry brown figures disappearing into the undergrowth. That was the arrowmark babblers, but they are no longer. Weren't so lucky with the visual of the arrowmark babblers, but I am told that there is another bird that we were chatting about earlier, the hummingbird, that I definitely need to make an effort to go and see, because Marianne and another one of our viewers have said they are the most breathtaking birds and actually sound like little bees when they hover nearby. Bear was the other viewer, and I'm jealous that you've seen them, but I guess that's the beauty of the planet that we live on. There's wonderful different animals on all the different continents. It's not just here in Africa where you get wonderful animals. And one day maybe I will head off on a hummingbird hunt in the Americas. I'm going to go back now to the last place where we did have a visual of Junior, and that way be able to give Brent an exact idea of where he was moving from, and that may help Brent as he maneuvers off-road trying to track down the pride. Our spring, that didn't sound too clever there. All good?
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, happy to hear that you've already got 39 birds on your list. And not only on your list, but you've also got 39 screenshots of them, and what a great way to be able to remember exactly what they are. Let's see if we can get you another one to get you into the 40s. Obviously, it's a little bit tricky because I don't know exactly what birds you have on your list already. But we should be able to find you a slightly more rare or less observed bird if we try. Okay, well, this is going to be a good it was going to be a good opportunity. The birds and their wings make our life very difficult. And they fly off very often before we can show them to you. That was a common scimitar, which I'm almost certain would have been able to be added to a lot of your lists. It's a bird we don't get to see and show you very often. It looks very similar to the green wood hoopoo. We'll get another shot at it on one of the safaris. Well, as I try and find exactly where we left Junior. We're gonna send you into the thick of things with Brent, and hopefully he will be able to track them down for you.
Welcome back, everyone. We're in the thick of things, as Scott says. I heard a battalier give quite a strange call, so we were just making our way. I could see the battalier in the distance, and this is about the area where Junior was last seen. So we are checking very carefully and still listening very carefully, but Jean-Andre spotted something that we thought you might want to have a look at. There we go. Bring it through to the dash. And it is a warthog tusk. So there we go, quite an old one. You can see it's had a lot of sort of sun wear on it. And so this is obviously from a very old possible kill in this area. And quite an interesting thing, you see how nicely it sits there balanced. And that's because you can see this very flat underside here and quite a bit smoother. So basically that's where the lower tusk or tush would have sat. And they would have smoothed that, and this would have helped sharpen that lower tusk. So when a warthog actually defends itself, it's the smaller lower tusk that's sharpened like a razor blade that does a lot of the defending. And as you can see here, that's how much of the tusk would have been out. But difficult to see on these older tusks, but on newer tusks you can see the side that's been out in the air as opposed to the side that's been actually inside. You can actually see how deep the root is. So obviously it has to be quite deep to hold that in when the warthogs fight. So there we go, nice warthog tusk, very old, and you can see all the sun cracks and sun damage. Whoopsie. And that's the side it's been lying like that. This is the side that's been up to the sun, and you can see the cracks and whatnot. And then if you look on the underside, not as cracked and still a bit smoother, or different type of cracks. So it isn't as white, it's a bit darker still. There are the cracks in that, but if you look at the other side that's been out to the sun, it's almost been bleached. So there we go, a nice little warthog tusk. Standing right. Sorry, go again. Copy, thanks. I am stationary at the moment. Just go again, please. Okay, Scotty, I'm in the block probably 100 meters to the northeast of you, just on the southern side of this drainage. I can hear a battalier giving quite a strange call, probably opposite where you are, and that's where I'm busy slowly trying to make my way to. Okay, copy, thanks. So I think I couldn't get further from those buffalo, further sort of west. Went into a whole bunch of big drainage lines. So I'm going to see if I can get access from this side, possibly somewhere. Yeah, so what happened there is Scott, it's just gone to the last position he saw Junior, and he's, oh, hello, revved his engine. There's a buffalo. The buffalo followed us as we've crossed through the drainage line. They're actually behind us. Let me just turn so I can show you quickly before we continue on. Copy. The buffalo actually followed us across, or a buffalo, because we were sitting with them. So just to let you know what Scotty and I were chatting about, Scotty's just revved his engine down there to the last spot he saw Junior, giving me a good idea. Oh yeah, they all come. Where I should start going to look again for these lions. So they're the buffalo bulls we were with earlier. And looking less and less likely that the lions are possibly stalking them. They might have attempted them earlier. They're now actually sort of moving towards the drainage line, and they might possibly end up at Twin Dams as it gets a bit warmer later in the morning. Okay, so we're going to continue on, leave those buffalo on their morning meander, and we're going to try and find a way to get into this myriad of little drainage lines and thickets. And I have followed, it was quarantine through here before, so I do have a few little sneaky tricks about where to access. Well, chatting about those strange calls I heard coming from the Basileia, Declan's asking how can I tell where the lions are from birds? Well, Declan, with all predators, a lot of animals will alarm call at them, and they do this to notify the other animals or other birds. So even though it's very unlikely a lion's going to catch a bird, they still will alarm at it because it's a predator. It's an instinctual response to any potential danger in that area. Thanks very much for that, Declan. I should have explained it better earlier, but thanks very much for that question. Hopefully those birds pay dividends and we do find the lions thanks to them. I think I've got a sneaky spot where I can get across further to the north here. There. Possibly here. I thought I saw a gap. Well, there we go. Okay, so this is looking a little bit more promising. I have used this little drainage line to come through here before, and I'm hoping that the lions will be around here somewhere. See if we got any tracks here quickly. I'm just going to jump out of the vehicle for a couple of seconds. There's some paths around here. I just want to see if I find any footprints, or hopefully get growled at. So nothing here, so that possibly means those lions might have crossed further to the sort of west, southwest of us. So we're going to continue on. we're going to stop here and listen for a little bit. Maybe something will give a hint to where these lines could possibly be. But in the meantime, back to the warthog tusk. Rena would like to know, is it naturally grooved? I assume you are referring to these grooves here. There's one big groove. That is a natural groove in the tusk. These cracks or whatnot are probably just coming from age and being out in the elements, but this big groove here is a natural groove. This groove, or this flat section here, which is sort of a groove, is a natural groove, but it is caused by the bottom tusks that rub up against, and this actually sharpens those bottom tusks. They're not actually called tusks, they're called tushes, the bottom set of tusks. And those are actually the sort of main defense weapons of a warthog. Not this big, impressive one that you can see sticking out their mouth. It's the small, tiny, sharpened one on the bottom, which is as sharp as a razor blade sometimes. Okay, we're going to continue on. Can't hear anything yet. Hopefully they're around here somewhere. There's a nice big animal path I know about from tracking leopards here before. And I'm going to go up to this here. And this actually is my old tracks from when we were following, a long time ago. It was Mvula mating with a female leopard called the Quatile female. And it always helps to have a little secret knowledge about where we're able to find access through these big blocks. And there's a really nice big animal path here that I'm hoping got them. There we go. Da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. Here are the lions. Look, it took a little bit of a bundu bashing, but we have found them. And I'm quite sure if I'd continued onto that path, I would have found their tracks coming this way. They have used this area before. I'm just going to have to, they're in quite a thick area. I'm going to go round. I'm just going to give you a quick view of Junior before I try reposition. Not the best view, but there he is. And we're just going to move around to where I can probably see the rest of the pride. I can just see a couple of ears. I can see the rest of the pride behind Junior, so I'm just going to move around to try find them. So these big game parts in these areas are really important, like where we crossed there now, even though there were no tracks there. It's good to know animal behavior, and we know quite a lot about lions and lion movements, and a lot of that comes from just spending a lot of time out in the bush with these animals. So we're going to move around to the rest of the pride now, and there's a really nice big elephant path. Here we go. And I'm pretty sure they would have utilized this to come from further on the south. You can see the path here off to the right. Quite grassy, so you won't be able to see their tracks on there. But I can just make them out, so they've obviously used this path to come through. So Scott has got one of the animals that helped us find these lions, that sent us into this area. So while we move through this thicket to try and get a nice view of the lions, we're going to cross back to Scotty for a few minutes so he can show you those.
Welcome back, folks. And we're sadly not going to be able to show you the battaliers because not one, not two, but all three of them have just flown out from this marula tree in front of us. So the birds are giving us a little bit of a runaround this morning, but that's not a problem because Brent, thankfully, has managed to find the lions, and very well done to him for managing to pinpoint where they were. It was extremely thick in there, and he did a good job finding them. So well done. And even though they are asleep now, it's great that we found them because it's a good platform to work off for the afternoon drive. So great prospects for the sunset safari because now we can start off with them and know what they're going to get up to in the course of the afternoon. Anyway, we're going to send you back to Brent with the sleepy lion, and we will continue trying to find a feathered friend to add to your bird lists.
welcome back. We're still trying to get in a position. The lions are around us. They're quite spread out, so I don't want to drive over a kitty cat. So I'm just taking a bit of a wide approach to them. Watch the aerial there. I can't see all of them yet. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Junior was off to the back there. But it is possible they're all lying in the grass around here. Hello ladies, there's one up and moving, while Junior's moving towards the rest of them up ahead to the left there. So I'm trying to have a quick look. It doesn't look like they had any success last night, even with something small. I can't see any sort of blood residue around their mouths or on their necks. But we'll all have a closer look now. Sorry, they're heating up. I'm just losing a layer or two. It looks like from where we left them on the sunset safari last night after their failed attempt at catching a buffalo, they have covered quite a bit of distance in a straight line, probably about 3 or 4 kilometers. But from where the tracks and Scotty and everyone's been following the tracks this morning, they've probably done closer to 6 because they've zigzagged a lot. Tired kitties. So let's try to see where, if all are present and accounted for. We've got 2 lionesses next to us here. I'm just going to move forward a skosh. So we've got 2 here. I can just see some bellies over here. And 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All present and accounted for. They have chosen possibly one of the more difficult areas of Djuma to follow up on animals. And we've all lost animals in these blocks before. I mean, I've lost quarantine male leopard numerous times. Karula also lost her in this block, and a Mvula. So lucky that we were able to find them again. A bit of educated guessing. I really wonder if they harassed those buffalo last night. Those buffalo were quite jumpy this morning. Or maybe they just got a whiff. The wind is blowing up the valley from where the lions are or were towards where those buffalo are. And those buffalo have now moved further south away from here. So maybe the buffalo just got a whiff of lions on the wind, and that was what was causing them to be a little bit nervous. So a big thank you to Scotty, who made it much easier for us to find these guys by putting us in the right spot and sending us in the right direction. what a lot of people don't realize is that if you are a new viewer, when it comes to finding animals, it's very much a team game. And working in unison always will produce more sightings than trying to do everything yourself. And not only between Scott and James and myself, but also between us and the commercial game drives that are here. So it does make a big difference. And at the end of the day, we all want to find the best animals for our game drives. Very peaceful moment with the lions. So we've got a question from a name we haven't heard too often before, and only once this morning. And good morning, Declan, who I think might be a new viewer. If you are, Declan, welcome on the live safaris. Declan would like to know, why are they completely ignoring me and not leaping on and trying to eat Chandra and myself at the moment? Well, Declan, these lions, apart from the fact that they've grown up with vehicles, which makes a big difference, a vehicle's only been around for about 100 years, and so they do not have an instinctive response to vehicles. So it's this big thing that doesn't really smell like anything tasty or anything threatening. It smells like petrol and oil, and humans to these days don't actually smell very much like a lion would instinctively know us to smell. We smell of deodorant and shampoo and clothes, washer and all that type of stuff. Also, if we drive respectfully and carefully around the animals, and we don't make them feel threatened, like you don't drive straight at them, you drive oblique angles to them, they will completely ignore you like they're doing at the moment. However, if Jandre were to stand up on the back, or I was to stand up on my seat, we would get a very, very different reaction. Now, the reason for this is lions are one of the dominant predators out in the bush, and the two dominant predators have developed sort of to avoid each other to a degree. So the dominant nocturnal predator are the lions, and they spend most of the daylight hours sleeping. And lions will sleep for about 20 hours a day. The dominant diurnal or daytime predator is us. So that upright bipedal figure of man causes lion distress. If we stood up here, they would probably run away or get aggressive, and that's because there's another dominant predator in their space. And we evolved at about the same time as lions, so we've both been competing for similar resources for about 200,000 years. Obviously, we've evolved a little bit further, and we're not sort of running after lions during the day and chasing them off kills to get meat anymore, but that is what was traditionally done in a lot of areas all over Africa. But during the day, at nighttime, when we want to go home, it's actually an instinctive response that we need to get out of the dark before the lions get out and other predators that can feed off us. So, as you can see, Declan, these guys have take very little notice of the vehicles, but if Jandre and I were to stand up, which we won't, because we're here to observe, and we don't want to irritate them or chase them away, we want to view them in their natural state. So it is great that we are able to do this, and obviously it's taken quite a few years, and I've moved into areas in southern Tanzania where the lions have been hunted extensively, and it's taken me 8 months to get them to not run away from vehicles. But it is possible, as long as you do it carefully and respectfully, you move around the animals, you are able to get sightings like we're having at the moment. Oh, hello. So it looks like she might have been getting a bit hot, and she's going to look for a bit of shade. we can see she's chewing a little bit of grass there. Quite a few of the predators out here will do that when they have some digestive problems, and you do seem to notice them doing it a bit more when they're hungry. So obviously all the worms and parasites in their stomach are screaming for food. And boom. So while we remain with these flat cats for a while, we're going to cross across to Scotty, who has got something quenching its morning thirst.
Welcome back, everyone, and perfect timing because there's a herd of Inyala just approaching Twin Dams. Oh no, and they got a big fright. Sadly, it's not a predator chasing them. Two young impala have come onto the scene that gave them a bit of a fright, and it's a very nerve-wracking place for a lot of the antelope because they know they run the risk of being ambushed by predators as they drink. But let's see if the impala are a little bit more bold and decide to take a few sips. There was one or two Inyala that were about to start drinking, but the impala changed their plans, and now it appears like they are going to forego this opportunity. Beautiful to see the two antelope together though. And also nice to see the difference in size between this fully grown big male impala and the other two that came down in front that were slightly smaller. Probably about 2.5 years of age. That impala, it wouldn't have been born last year but the year before in November or December. Beautiful. Now, just a quick warning. We have been told that there could be some satellite problems. Apparently some satellite maintenance is going to be done somewhere in Europe, which may have an effect for the last half an hour of broadcast. We've got no control over this and are not sure how it will affect us, but there is a slight chance that the last half an hour of the show may not work out. So we're crossing fingers that that doesn't happen, but in the next few minutes we'll find out. If it does cut out once, it in all likelihood means it will be the end of the broadcast. There's no chance of it coming back. So that's just a prior warning. Let's just take a moment or two here to see if one of these antelope doesn't come down and drink. If not, we will send you back to Brent and the lions. But the fact that these two have hung around makes me feel like they do not want to pass up this opportunity. As we head deeper into the dry season, there will be less and less water points for the animals to drink in, which will certainly make our lives a lot easier in finding them. Waterholes will become more active, those that do still have water in them. And for those of you who are joining us or were with us earlier on, you would have noticed that the hummerkop bird, which you can see in the bottom of your screen, is in all likelihood the same one that we saw earlier. It's no longer hunting, but is on the move. And maybe it'll decide to wade in here and look for some small fish or frogs to feed on. Okay, well, it doesn't look like the impala is going to drink, so we are going to... Oh, why is it looking so intently in that direction? Has it seen something? Probably not. All the other antelope ran off in that direction, so it's probably keeping an eye on them. And with all the other antelope in the area, if there was a predator there, I'm fairly certain they would have already alarm called, although you've got to be careful in scenarios like this because often predators will be very close to their prey without the prey noticing them, so you could drive past a herd of relaxed antelope and assume that there's no predator, and moments later as you drive off, a leopard or lion could ambush and unleash an attack from the bush nearby. So you do have to be a little bit careful of that, but I don't think that's going to happen now, so we will send you back to Brent and the lion and try and look for something else interesting to show you a bit later.
Welcome back, and from a round-leaf teak or elephant lollipops to very sleepy lions. So Scotty's just updated you that unfortunately there might be some maintenance happening on the satellite at 9 o'clock, and our fingers are crossed that it doesn't affect us, but if it does, we'll apologize in advance, but we will keep going till then, and hopefully it has zero effect on what we are up to out here on Juma Private Game Reserve at the moment. We are with the Nkahuma Pride, who we've been spending quite a lot of time with recently, and they have not been very successful in their hunting endeavors at the moment, and they have covered quite a lot of ground. So hopefully at this sunset safari they'll get a bit more luck. So just a report on other lions that are about. While we're off air, I just got a call from Johan, who's one of the landowners in Buffalo's Hook, and he's just let me know that the Birmingham boys are actually down in Buffalo's Hook at the moment, all 5 of them. So really nice to know they're not too far away, so hopefully they will come this way at some point. I'm really, really excited to eventually see those guys. This lioness seems a little bit distracted, moving around. You see she's eating the grass again. As I said, lions do this from time to time when they have digestive problems, but it seems to me that they do it a lot more when they're hungry. And I don't know whether it's possibly that the parasites, the tapeworms and other funny things that live in a lion's stomach are complaining and they're trying to sort of abate them, but I'll have to find out a little bit more about that, see if we can find some information on that. Well, Brenna, thanks for staying with us till we found the Nkahumas. Rena would like to know whether the buffalo are still close to the lions. They are reasonably close, but they are moving further away from the lions. As I said, the wind is actually blowing from where the lions are towards where the buffalo were, and that could have possibly been why they were a little bit nervous this morning, and they have moved further to the south. Boom. Back to doo-doo. Back to sleep. So as we can see, we've got lots of napping lions around us at the moment. And Bree's got a very interesting question that says she would like to know whether lions would get hungry enough that they would forego all this napping and continuously hunt. Bree, unfortunately, with their metabolisms, they are unable to do that. If they were to continuously hunt, they would get too hot. And especially during the day, it would be very difficult for them to move, and they wouldn't have enough energy if they did actually get to catch something to hunt. So they do have to continue napping, and they will hunt more or attempt more hunts when they are hungry. But generally, they do need this nap time, sort of recharge and build that energy. At the moment, I mean, they're hungry. I think we know now they might have caught something small. It doesn't look like it, though, but if it was very small, which wouldn't have fed the pride. But they now haven't eaten for 4 days that we know about. They could have caught something very small, like a steenbok or a duiker or something, and that wouldn't even show but it would give them a little bit more energy. Even an animal the size of an impala would provide very, very little food for a pride of this size. So there is a possibility that we've missed them catching something. And I mean, in the greater Kruger area, fascinating enough, lions have been recorded eating, I think it was 37 different species. I think that's, double check that for you now, but it's 37 different species. They've even been recorded eating termites, field mice, franklin, even things like a full lion would kill but not eat, like a civet or hyena. There have been records of them actually feeding on them when they have been hungry enough. So I think the thing is that if a lion is hungry enough, it will find something to eat, even grasshoppers. But hopefully for them, they're not nearly at that stage yet. They're not that desperate. But hopefully for them, the odds are that, as I said, from this area, from the research I found, it is from about 60 kilometers from us, but probably still relative. We are in the same open system. That lion success rates are between 12 and 17%, so not very high. So we've been with them now for 5 days on and off, and the odds are that they've probably attempted about 7 or 8 hunts so far, so hopefully the next 1 or 2 is going to be successful for them. We have seen them far more hungry than this before, and we have seen them a bit more desperate. But hopefully for the Nkuhuma's sake, and hopefully one of either Scott or myself will be with them when they do make that successful hunt. I'm just going to move the vehicle a little bit to try and give you a different view on these lazy kitties. So we're going to cross across to Scott very, very quickly, from the largest carnivore to the smallest.
Well, look at this miniature carnivore wrestling match. Some of them are playing and cuddling one another, but the other two are certainly at it. And look at how cool this is. Dwarf mongoose wrestling. Now it'll be interesting to know exactly why they are wrestling with one another. There will be an alpha pair who are dominant within this colony. So who knows, possibly just 2 youngsters playing around. Oh! But this is a wonderful action to see. The other 2 in the foreground you can see are far more interested in grooming one another. But it does seem quite playful. The wrestling between these 2, it's something that I actually haven't seen before. So we can always be pleasantly surprised out here by all the different animals, even if they are the tiny dwarf mongoose, one of the smallest carnivores. And aren't we lucky to be switching between one of the largest, the lion, to one of the smallest? I'm trying to look through my binoculars to establish whether they're males or females that are fighting, but I can't quite tell. Maybe you, the viewers, have been able to have better visuals, but they do look like they are sub-adults. So a little bit of adolescent boisterousness that we are seeing here. Will they continue, or have they had enough? This is really an awesome sighting, and sometimes you do get lucky, especially on the winter months when it's cold in the morning and they ain't all enjoying being able to bask in this morning sunshine, warming up after a cold night. And I guess playing around with one another will also help them to warm up. You can see the size comparison between what looks like now the three that are all tussling with one another to some of the bigger adults in the colony. Now they will live in and around the small termite mound. You'll see them disappearing into a few burrows. This will be one of their many little hideouts and homes within their territory. They could have anywhere from 5 to 15 different hideouts like this termite mound, old fallen down trees with holes in them that they will also use. And highly social, you can see a lot of them grooming one another, getting ready for a day of action. Look at them all huddled up there. This is absolutely awesome. Well, so far so good, and it appears the satellite maintenance being done in Europe has not had an effect on our broadcast yet, so it's looking promising to complete the last half an hour of the broadcast, but just to forewarn you, it could give in at any moment. They've had a very late start to the morning, but I don't blame them. It is still quite cool. Oh, we've got some more wrestling going on now. And as Wium zooms out, you'll get a great perspective of how small they are and an idea of the surroundings of their little homestead here. So as I mentioned briefly earlier when the two were wrestling, it's interesting that this colony will be run by an alpha pair. Occasionally in family makeups like this, the second dominant pair will also be allowed to reproduce when the going is good, but it typically will only be the alpha pair that are doing the breeding, and the rest of the colony will aid in helping to raise those youngsters. From a safety point of view, from a food point of view, they'll all clan together. You can certainly see that they are very affectionate with other members of their little colony, and like most animals that do live in these complex social structures, there's a lot of grooming and reaffirming of relationships. So it takes up a large portion of their day, making sure everyone's happy, not just going out and worrying about themselves and feeding themselves. There's all these rituals that have to go on. Timing has been lucky this morning to see them all huddled up together. Now, even though these adolescents seem to be playing, it's very useful training for them for future potentially serious fights, or more importantly, in catching prey. Their agility that they are practicing and honing now will help them to catch some potentially dangerous prey that they will come across: scorpions, little snakes. And I believe a lot of you on Twitter are agreeing that this kind of behavior is very typical of teenagers. Look at how awesome this is. Again, when there's so much action with so many different animals, not an easy job for the cameraman to decide where exactly to film, but I think Wium's doing a great job. James would like to know if dwarf mongoose are endangered, and no, not as far as I'm aware. They have got nothing to worry about. And you'll typically find that endangered animals are, especially the large, I guess that's not true, but a lot of the larger animals and larger predators are endangered for various reasons, but thankfully this tiny carnivore is not persecuted by man, and there's more than enough habitat for them to occur both inside and outside of national parks. So they have got healthy populations as far as I'm aware. What I will do is have a quick look in my book to try and get you an idea of the distribution and how far they will stretch through southern Africa. Oh, this is very good. So once they have stopped performing, I will show you their habitat distribution, but they do stretch quite far up into East and Central Africa. We were chatting about their feeding earlier, and Bear would like to know if they will share meals. I guess, like most carnivores, there will be a lot of competition for food once it is on the table. But with larger kills that may be made, I'm fairly certain they will all try and tear off little tidbits. So I don't think it'll be very friendly sharing, but sharing through default. One of them may catch a bigger prey item and therefore allow the rest of the colony to feed on them, even though it may be against that individual's will. Now, you get different colored dwarf mongoose further up into East Africa. I remember them being more yellow in color, whereas here they are very dark in color. And you can see on the top right here, the left-hand picture or individual is more like the ones we see here, but they do come in quite lighter shades. And then if we pan across to the distribution map of Africa, we can see that we are right at the southernmost points of their distribution within South Africa, and they stretch further up into our bordering countries and quite far up, almost into Sudan and Ethiopia. And then the man versus mongoose in the corner, you would have got an idea of how tiny they are. Their bodies are probably only about 20 centimeters long, and their tails will add on probably the same length to that. So tiny little animals, and it says here really up to 600 grams, so half a kilogram, which would be about a pound in weight at the most. Okay, well, I wonder if we should carry on watching them, because I can see they've just started up a little bit more wrestling, and it's something that I haven't seen very often. So No point in rushing off when there's all this action unfolding here. And a report from Brent is that the lions are so flat in the grass that it's actually hard to see them. So I'm fairly certain it'll be this afternoon that will be the time to come in and join us on the next safari if you want to see those lions up and about. And they certainly are good prospects. They're looking hungry, and the more hungry they are, the more inclined they are to get off hunting earlier, and hopefully we'll be able to see them in the daylight hours trying to track down some prey. If it is your first time joining, we've been fairly unlucky when it comes to the Nkuhuma Pride. We've yet to see them make a kill, and considering how long we've been out here, it's a little bit overdue. And maybe, just maybe, this afternoon will be the time where we can finally capture them in action. Judy in Canada has noticed a contrast in coloration between the tree that is above these dwarf mongoose relative to most of the other trees in the area, and that's because it's one of the evergreens. It's called a guarri tree, and they are one of the evergreens that will keep its green leaves throughout the course of the winter months. Interestingly, its branches can be used and are used by the local Tsonga or Shangaan people of this area as a toothbrush. Now, the dwarf mongoose is not the only mongoose that we get in this area. And Pam would like to know if it is the most prevalent, and it certainly is. There's more dwarf mongoose than banded mongoose, who are also a social mongoose that live in colonies, anywhere from 10 to 20 individuals on average. But we don't see them nearly as often as we see the dwarf mongooses, and we neither see the slender nor the white-tailed mongoose, both solitary mongooses, as much either. There are chances of there being water mongoose in this area as well, but again, we don't see those. And these are therefore the most prevalent of the mongooses in this area. Well, finally, it appears that they are heading off to forage for insects, little bits of fruit they will even feed on, but they need to start their day. And while they head off into the unknown, we are going to send you back to Brent so you can have one last look at those sleepy lion, and we will see you all a little bit later.
So, not much has changed here with Nkuhuma Pride. Some of the lionesses moved back towards the rest of the Pride. And it's quite pretty as you just see them lying in this wonderful Thermida grass here. Very important grass. And you can see the one who's on her back. And you can see the grass moving above her in a light breeze. And that is probably the most important grazing grass here. Thermida triandra, or Natal red grass. And a very, very popular with all the grazers. They're lying up right on the edge of a drainage line, but in this sort of transition zone. So where the water seeps from the top of the crests down towards the drainage, and you get these wonderful little open grasslands here. And oh, we've got one standing up. Movement! One of the little sub-adults has stood up. She's probably going to move to where the rest of the pride are and flop down on top of one of them. Or at least nearby. Oh, a hairball, possibly. Probably. Trying to get rid of possibly a hairball or even some bone maybe that has been in her stomach and it's being rejected. There we go. Woof, woof. Didn't like that, but it looks like she got it out. Still got that funny taste. Probably a few impala and buffalo hairs stuck between the teeth. So there is a little bit of a interesting movement, and we often get asked whether the lions get hairballs, and there was a prime example of that. Oh, we've got movement again. Seems the cloud has come over. Don't think they're going to move too far, just changing sleeping positions. Going to join the other lioness who got up a little earlier and moved to behind the bush there. And flop. I do love the way the lions lie down. Sometimes they just sort of, you can even hear that, or that, or the air coming out of their lungs as they sort of just flop quite hard on the ground. Looks like the others might go join there now. It has got a little bit cooler. I still don't think these guys are going to move. I think they're just moving sleeping positions. There we go, boom. There we go. I don't know if you guys could hear that. But, oh, the air coming out of her lungs as she flops down. And here's the hairball female. Young sub-adult going to join the adults. So they are definitely still hungry. I don't think they're going to hunt again during the day unless something happens to stumble upon them. But I think on the sunset safari, we might get some movement. There we go. Next one, going to form a lion pile. So back to the quite amusing little scene we saw of that young sub-adult trying to get rid of a hairball or possibly some bone. Joe would like to know, do they stink? They do, Joe. Very much so, because there's quite a lot of rotting meat or semi-digested stuff in there. So it would be, stood on a thorn. Be very, very smelly. Definitely something that would make most humans rich if you had to give that hairball a good smell. Nice fresh one like that. Sun breaking through the clouds again. It's just going to a nice shady spot under that quarry bush. I think you might find a sneaky suspicion that later on in the day there might be a few more with her under that bush if she chooses to sleep there. So back to that retching we just saw from that young sub-adult. Wild Dog Pup has commented maybe it was the grass. Wild Dog, that was a different lioness to watch the one we saw eating quite a lot of grass. Since we've been here, we haven't seen that one eat any grass, but maybe it would definitely make a possibly help and aid in that sort of expelling of unwanteds from the belly. We're going to move around a little bit, see if we can see the rest of the pile. And of course, young Junior is on his own, very flat. Doesn't look like much could bother him at the moment. Not even a stampeding herd of wildly beasts. So let's see if we can find a view of the lion pile. So we've got a very unusual question from Gilly in Milwaukee. She was wondering, Brent, was that a building I could see in the background? Gilly, I can very safely say that there are no buildings where we are. We're probably in one of the largest areas with no roads on the whole of Djuma. If there was a building, it would be a big surprise to me. I'm trying to see, they lie this way so we can look at their faces. How's that, Sean? Yeah. More? Very good. Good or more? Good. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in a row. It's amazing when you watch an apex predator like that and they look like they're in such deep sleep. But the slightest smell or noise might set them off and switch them from very much flat cat to awake, alert, and into that sort of predator mode. And they look quite cute and cuddly and sort of nothing to be particularly afraid of when they're lying like this. Oh, other lioness is coming in. I definitely could use a meal. Now we've got a half moon of lions around this acacia. But it is always wonderful, even spending time with sleeping lions. And you can learn, and you see different things like that sort of upchuck reflex, trying to get rid of, we couldn't really see what it was, either a hairball or bone, or even possibly something that was disagreeing with her. And that we don't see that type of behavior too often. So the more time you spend with these animals, the more you learn about them. And also one of the nice things about spending so much time with a particular pride, you do get to learn their habits a little bit, what areas they like to walk through. So if you're in an area and you've got tracks and you're trying to second guess where they're going, based on their behavior the last time they were in the area, you can actually make an educated guess. And obviously, often you're completely wrong, but that's one of the fun things about tracking and looking for animals in the bush. You are testing your knowledge every time, even when you're tracking. And if I was a lion, where would I go? Or if I was a leopard, would I go down this elephant path or that elephant path? And so a lot of tracking is not only physically seeing the tracks, it's learning how to think like an animal and try to predict their movements, which for me is absolutely fascinating. At the moment, I can pretty much spot on predict that the lions are going to sleep. For the next while, at least. For the next 5 minutes at least, they're definitely going to be sleeping. And hopefully they prove me wrong. Looks like you should actually sort of go join them, Chandra. So, back to the coughing cat, that sub-adult lioness. Georgianne in Illinois said she noticed a scar on her back and on her left shoulder. Georgianne, I wouldn't go as far as say the scar, it just looks like a little scratch. And it probably, I've noticed it over the last few days, and it's probably from when they were last feeding. But as we come to the close of this sunrise safari, it has been fantastic. And at least the lions have been a little bit more cooperative than that Shelley's Franklin this morning, who all we wanted them to do was give us a call after calling so beautifully as we tried to find him. But it's been wonderful having you guys on the Sunrise Safari. For our regular viewers, always great to have you on the back. Thanks for the questions. And for our new viewers who've started sending through questions, really, really wonderful to have you. Thanks very much for joining us, and you should definitely join us for the Sunset Safari as well in a few hours. I'm sure Scotty or myself will be coming and following up on these lions, because I definitely think they're going to start moving again a little later. So Scotty's going to do some TLC on the Wendell, or the Wendy, which is the vehicle he's been driving. So I'm going to say goodbye for Scott and Wium, or aka the Wildebeest, who are trying to get Wendy all sorted for the Sunset Safari. And from Gendre and myself, a big thank you again, and thanks to everyone in FC, and thanks to the satellite maintenance man who decided to let us carry on for an extra half an hour. For the last few seconds, we're going to bid you adieu and let you have a look at some lazy lions.